Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to look into today is a case that is known as Escape from Salt Creek. It's a very interesting case and it highlights just how badly going on a backpacking trip could go wrong. This was suggested by Ian. I appreciate any suggestions you guys have, so if you have any more, let me know. I'll look into them for you. So there's so many people out there that would love the idea of going on a backpacking trip, traveling the world with everything you need in your backpack, traveling from place to place, not necessarily with a lot of money. A lot of people do it and intend on finding work out there to kind of fund themselves and keep themselves going, but it often leads to people hitchhiking, meeting strangers, either doing the same thing or just generally the people that live in the area. The thing is though, sometimes backpacking isn't the dream come true that not everyone imagines it to be, but I guess a lot of people think nothing will ever go wrong, but unfortunately sometimes it does. And sometimes you might find yourself fighting for your life, as Beatriz and Lena discovered back in 2016. In February of 2016, 23-year-old Brazilian backpacker Beatriz met Lena Rebente, and I apologize if I've pronounced her name wrong, but she was a German backpacker of the same age. Lena was taking a gap year out to travel and she chose the southern coast of Australia as the area she wanted to go to. Beatriz was a student that was finishing her nursing studies and she just wanted to have the amazing experience of traveling like so many people do, and so many, people would love the chance of going exploring the world. I'd love to do it myself. The women quickly became friends after meeting in an Adelaide hostel, and they got to talking about the plans and where they wanted to go and things like that, and they realised that actually their plans were really similar, and so they decided that rather than split up and go their separate ways to kind of the same areas, that they would just join up and go together. Why not? They had heard about the Great Ocean Road and they decided that they wanted to go and check it out. So they jump on Gumtree with the intention to search for somebody that could drive them from Adelaide to Melbourne, which I believe is around about an 8-hour drive away. In no time they found a driver around about their age, but unfortunately, literally the night before they were supposed to go, this person ended up having car trouble and had to cancel. He could no longer take them. They did have a second choice, so 2 people had gotten back to them about this driving trip, but the second choice they didn't really want to go with. They found him to be kind of aggressive, with his messages. He was constantly double texting them and barraging them and kind of being like, do you want to go with me or not, kind of thing. This man was called Roman Hines. And little did the girls know that he was about to make a despicable name for himself. So prior to the girls' arrival, well, I believe it was about 6 months before they got there, a local artist called Sylvia Clark met Roman, who was, I believe, 59 at the time. And she really liked him. By the first time she met him, she really, really liked him. She said that he was mysterious and he was charming. And they began to see each other, eventually getting into a relationship together. They had been together for just over 6 months, and she had begun to see a darker side to Roman. She had begun being frightened of him, and then everything went from going really well, having a fantastic few months together, everything being perfect, to everything going wrong, and she was frightened of him. And basically one night she woke up and he was acting very aggressively. She looks over to her left and her left hand is tied up to the bed. She basically said, "What the hell are you doing?" He just swore at her in response and told her to shut up. He then carried on tying her up and then went on to sexually assault her. She said that she was too ashamed to go to the police, but she did actually end the relationship and just get the heck out of there. Thankfully, just in time too, because they had plans that they were going to go on this camping trip to this fishing beach located on Salt Creek Beach. It was just 2 hours south of Adelaide and it was very isolated. And when I say isolated, boy, do I mean isolated. It's literally been described as being in the middle of nowhere. So people use that kind of saying all the time, but that is kind of a literal what this place was. To me, Sylvia was a really lucky lady because happened that he didn't commit those atrocious acts before they went on this camping trip. I believe he certainly would have done it there, and maybe it would have been worse. Maybe he would have actually taken her life there too. So she was lucky to get out of there. Not to be sexually assaulted, I'm not saying that, but she was just lucky to have not gone on this trip with him and to be free of this horrible, horrible man. Because who knows what kind of darkness he would have unleashed on her in the middle of nowhere where she probably wouldn't have been able to get any help. So with his girlfriend out of the picture now, he was looking for someone else to go on this trip with him. And of course that is where Beatriz and Lena come in, where they are actively out there searching for a ride. So back to the girls, they felt like they had no choice but to go with Roman. The next day, on the 29th of February in 2016, they set this sort of place to meet up, and so both the girls go there and Roman is already there waiting for them. The girls were initially shocked by his age, so in his photos I believe he'd put ones up of him being a lot younger or something, so they didn't expect him to be the age that he actually was when they turned up. Despite that, they had each other and they were comforted by the fact that they had each other. And I guess you never really think that anything bad is going to happen to yourself. Not a lot anyway. You just don't think it will happen to you. And so they headed towards his car, not knowing that the danger that they were in. For the next 2 hours, the car journey was really, really quiet. Roman didn't really say anything to the girls and they were relaxed. They're taking selfies of each other. They're doing like a video of the start of their journey. I believe Beatriz is in the front seat and Lena is in the back seat, so they felt comfortable enough to not be both in the, you know what I mean? Sometimes if you're getting a ride with a stranger or whatever, or a taxi, you like to be in the back. You don't often want to be in the front, but they felt comfortable enough for one of them to be in the front. Everything seemed to be going fine. It was all smiles and giggles all round. It was only a few more hours into the journey that they had like a hint of worry. Roman began kind of acting a little bit strange. He told them that this journey couldn't be done in one trip, which it definitely could. It was an 8-hour journey, don't get me wrong, it's long, but it could have been done in one trip, which was the plan. That is what they planned on doing. He suggested that because it couldn't be done in one trip, that they should camp out for the night. And camp out, where do you think he would suggest? Well, yeah, Salt Creek Beach. That it was his suggestion. He's heading towards it. He said, I love this place. It's like great for fishing. You can get some good photos here. And, you know, let's stop here for the night kind of thing. As if it was just preempted, like he's driving past and he's like, oh, that's a good place to stop, when in fact I believe that that was his plan all along, not that they were to know that. And this was the first worry really, because this wasn't part of the plan. They'd planned to just drive until they got there, and now suddenly Roman's changing it without even consulting them. But Lena was really exhausted and they just kind of, you know, they went along with it. They didn't think anything bad was going to happen. So Lena decided that she was going to have a sleep in the car, and Beatriz got out and helped Roman to set up the camp, set up the tents. She helped to cook some food, I believe. And as the sun began to set, Roman told her about these kangaroos that he'd seen over kind of the sand dunes and asked her if she wanted to go and find them with him. He showed her these footprints of these kangaroos and, you know, she wanted to go and see them. So off they went to go and find these kangaroos. The two walked away from the camp, but little did she know he was hiding on his person hunting blades, ropes and hammers, and his intentions were certainly not to go and find some kangaroos. Once they were a fair distance away and had seen no wildlife, no kangaroos, no nothing pretty much, you know, Beatriz was hinting to go back, and that was when he took her, you know, kind of the back of her head, threw her into the sand face first, and she thought it was a joke at first, but then he climbs up her back, forcing her down into the ground, and he gets out this rope that she didn't even know that he had. Again, she had no idea he was carrying these things in him. He then takes his knife and he stabs it in front of her in the sand, as if to say, like, I'm in charge now, look at me, I have a weapon, don't try anything, because there it is. As like a scare tactic, and sort of exerting his dominance over her. He tried to tie her up, but she's fighting, she's struggling. He's trying to tie her hands and legs, and she manages to throw one of the lengths of rope away from him, and it was out of his reach, and that just made him really angry. Like, he then turned her over onto her back and he punched her. He said, you either make this easy or I'm gonna break your arm. He tied her up and then used the knife to cut her bikini off. He began touching her and things like that as she tried to wriggle out of his grasp. Punching and slapping also continued, so he was abusing her as well. He tried to threaten her into complying with him, doing what he wanted her to do. And she said that the first image that went through her mind was seeing her body lying dead in the sand and her mother having to come over from Brazil to identify her daughter. She was really convinced that she was going to die there. She told him that she would give up and do whatever he wanted if they would go back to camp. It would be much more comfortable in the tents. They could have a drink, they could have a laugh, they could chill. It didn't have to be that way. It didn't have to be forced. And he was a big man. He was 198 centimeters tall. So he towered over the girls and he had to do something. Otherwise, you know, he would have maybe murdered her on that beach. So he agreed. He thought that that was, you know, a decent idea. It would stop her from struggling. They would go back and he would have his way with her and she would let him. But the closer and closer they got to the car, the more he seemed to change his mind. And then Beatrice just took the opportunity when it arose and she screamed Lena as loud as she could. She only got one chance though, because as soon as it escaped her lips, he pummeled her back down into the sand again. Remarkably, even though the wind was blowing, the ocean was out there, Lena was asleep in the car, she heard this chilling scream and she woke up and came out of the car to, you know, wonder what the heck was going on. She described it as being the scream of somebody that was really in danger. So she goes out, she's heading towards Roman, who she notices is on top of her friend, who is naked. And Lena said she felt rage and adrenaline and she goes running over screaming for him to get off her, and what did he think he was doing? She didn't know that he was armed. Roman turned to her and said, "I just wanted to try it." And while he was facing the other way, Beatrice noticed that he had this long handle tucked into his belt. She thought that it might either be an axe or a hammer. And so she screams to Lena to run because he's got an axe. So Lena does. She runs. She turns around, she runs back towards the car to get her stuff so that she can call the police. Roman, however, chased her and managed to get to her before she actually could call the police. He smashed her over the head with a hammer. So I guess what she had seen in his belt was a hammer, not an axe. And Lena stumbled away. She's trying to escape. She's bleeding, you know, and he hit her 3 more times in the head with this hammer. After suffering 4 blows to the head and bleeding everywhere, somehow she was still conscious, which is so lucky. Lena starts to run again. Roman decides that he's going to get in his car to chase her instead. So as he gets in the car and he's trying to like fumble with his keys and start it or whatever, Lena manages to run over to Beatrice and she manages to untie her. And then the two decide that they have better chances if they both run off in separate directions. If maybe only one of them is going to survive, then the way to do it would be to split up, because there was only one of him, he could only follow one of them. So Beatrice ran up into like the sand dunes, into the bushy areas, and she hid in the bushes naked. She watched as Roman started chasing Lena in the car straight down the beach. Lena found herself in somewhat of a horror movie. She's literally running away from Roman's car on foot after being smashed in the head 4 times with a hammer. She runs into the dunes, you know, with the hopes that she'll lose him. But guess what? His car, of course, is a 4x4 and it's not really that much of an issue for him, so he just follows her. She runs for almost 2 miles and he hits her 4 times with his car, with the grill of his car, sometimes sending her flying forwards. On one occasion, I believe she remembers the truck kind of passing over her with the wheels being on both sides of her. Each time she got up and she ran, but he carried on following her. However, she was getting weaker and weaker and she was starting to realise that she couldn't carry on with this, and so she made like a decision as to what she was going to do. She turns around to face him, and as he's driving towards her, she jumps on top of his bonnet. This made him really angry and he began driving like a crazy person, trying to shake her off. In the meantime, she's climbed up to the roof and there's a grill on the top of his car and she's just clinging on for dear life. He's driving through the dunes like a crazed idiot, trying to shake her off, but she manages to keep a good grip and stay on top of that roof. And bearing in mind she's bleeding all over the place, she's got 4 wounds to her head at this point. She's been hit by the car 4 times. I think it's pretty remarkable that she managed to hold on. He eventually gets out of the car and tries to get her down, realising that I guess the driving like a crazy person isn't working. She's still up there. He tries to hit her with the hammer, but she manages to just kick him away because she's high up and he's lower down. So she kicks him in the face. She's got a good vantage point from up there and he just can't seem to get her down. He jumped back in the car really angrily, frustrated at this point, and he drove like a maniac again until he bogged the car. and then he got out again. I believe there must have been a shovel up there or something, because he gets out of the car again and he asks her to pass him the shovel. She tells him that she's not going to pass him the shovel unless he does a few things for her. So she agreed to give him the shovel if he allowed her to go back in the car, gave her something to stem the bleeding, that he would take her back to her bag and then drive her to the road, which he agreed to. I guess at this point, he felt like Beatriz had probably already gotten help and, you know, she'd gone. She was there getting help. He didn't really have much of a choice, I guess. So Lena demanded that he threw away his weapons, which he did. He gave her a blanket because she was wet with blood, and then he refused to drive anymore unless she got off the roof. So she did. She gets back in the car. She left the passenger door open just in case. And she felt like she needed to get back in that car to survive. Again, she was getting weaker and weaker at this point. She probably would have just, I don't know, maybe even died out there, passed out there if she hadn't have gotten back in the car. They drove, and eventually she sees this car full of fishermen and she screams for help and jumps out of the car and rushes over to them, by which point Roman just speeds off. The fishermen that helped to obviously save Lena would later say that as she's heading towards them, she was completely covered in blood to the point that they didn't know whether she was male or female because there was just so much blood, they just couldn't tell. Whilst this was all going on, Beatriz was in the bushes. She was naked. She's watching Lena run down the beach and off they go. And then she sees these fishermen driving past and she jumps out. She jumps pretty much on top of the car, told them what was happening. Again, she's naked at this point and she asked for their help. They call the only person that they really know that knows the area really well, and his name is Adam Stewart. He was the owner of a house close by. He knew the terrain and the area really well. I believe like he was this terrain expert of Salt Creek. And so they called Adam and Adam called the police. This was when Beatriz convinced them to go back and look for Lena. She didn't want to leave her friend out there. She didn't want to get herself safely out of the way and then go back for her. She wanted them to go back for her now. So they did. So the girls escaped after this immense battle for their lives, and Roman tries to make his getaway. Once the women were both safe, the police, along with Adam, went down to track where Roman had gone, and they found him further down the beach. He was just sat in his car thinking about what he was going to do next. After a little while though, he pretty much just gave up. I guess he just thought that there was not much else he could do, and so he just willingly let them arrest him. Beatriz and Lena was immediately taken to the hospital where they were treated for their injuries, and luckily they did both make full recoveries. It was later revealed that Roman was a twice married father of 5, chef turned carer for his father, a man that seemed perfectly respectful on the surface, who was secretly trawling Gumtree for young single backpackers who were just looking for places to go, looking to, you know, find these beautiful places, explore and just enjoy their time out there. And he was a predator just waiting to pounce. He was a collector of violent pornography and bondage and things like that, and the judge said that he was just waiting for his opportunity. In May of 2017, Roman Hines was found guilty of 6 charges, including indecent assault, aggravated kidnapping, and endangering life over the attacks. And he was sentenced to 22 years in jail with a 17-year non-parole period. The women after the incident did hide their identities for a long time, I do believe, until they did this kind of interview, like a reveal all interview, where they give away their identities. Although I don't know what Beatriz's surname is, which is why I haven't put it in. It's not me being disrespectful, I couldn't find it. The girls remain close friends after this traumatic ordeal and this life-threatening experience. I am so glad that they did manage to escape this man, because who knows what he would have done to them if they hadn't. I did also read that his ex-girlfriend truly believed that he would have killed them. All the women that were around him were so lucky, he could have killed any one of them really. Roman also became known as the Salt Creek Wolf, which is where he got his infamy, I guess. And this case is widely known as, you know, Escape from Salt Creek because of that. It makes me really happy to present you guys with a survival story, because so many of these cases unfortunately don't end that way. And this case is really, really remarkable. Obviously, despite it being a success story, these women were left with so much trauma, physical, mental. They have all these scars as a result of it, and they have to live with what happened to them, and that is just heartbreaking, but their strength is truly, truly inspiring. These women literally fought for their lives and they succeeded. But yeah, that is the end of the case. If you guys have enjoyed this video, give me a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for similar content. Anyway guys, that's all I have today on the case that is known as Escape from Salt Creek. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye!